Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more relationship stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too. Let's crack on with today's first story. Much love, guys. Now today's first story comes from Optimal Ad 6885 and says, "Am I the arsehole for making my boyfriend get out of the car when he made a comment about my dead mum?" And before we do get into the story, I do want to give you a couple of warnings. There is talk about death of a parent, obviously, and about suicide as well. So if you do want to skip the story, please feel free to do so. Timestamps are always down in the description and along the timeline below. Thank you. Now, we've been together 10 months, lived together and argue pretty frequently about different things, but this time the line was definitely crossed. The story starts with his car getting towed. We don't know why and he's upset. I know it sucks getting your car towed, so I offered to give him a ride, help out however I can, and continue to be nice to him in spite of him not being very nice to me. I take him there and we wait until he gets into the front of the line, and then he tells me to take him to his mother's so he can get money in the bank to deposit it, which is 30 minutes away. So I take him to do that and he's still being rude to me, saying it's my fault his car got towed, how I took the easy way out, which I guess is defined as paying my $8 monthly parking fee on time, blaming me for what's out of my control. At this point, it's been about 3 hours. He still hasn't thanked me for what I did, and I felt unappreciated. After the bank, we agreed his mum should take him back to the tow place, so I started heading back that way. I then asked him what the address was, and he said he didn't know. I asked, "You don't know where your mum lives?" And he replied, "At least I have a mum." For context, my mother committed suicide when I was 3 years old, and my father just passed away in June. The deaths are something I'm still coping with, so when he said that, my bitch switch flipped on and I pulled the car over, telling him to get out and walk. I understand that didn't help the situation at all, and he had the right to be angry to begin with, but his car being towed was completely out of my hands, and I don't think I deserve to be treated that way. Literally not even an hour before we figured out his car was gone. We were out shopping and laughing and all around having a good day. The comment was unnecessary in my opinion, but maybe I should have just cut him some slack and give him a ride. Am I the arsehole? Updates. I've been getting a lot of feedback for this post, mostly positive, which I appreciate. I want to give an actual update once some real action has taken place. As of right now, we are broken up and I don't plan on forgiving him, and he will be moving out as soon as the necessary papers are signed. Thank you Reddit for giving me the wake-up call I needed. And we do have an update in a moment as well, which is 5 days later. Now, before we even got to the comment, you mentioned that you've been together for 10 months, which I kind of look at as a positive in some ways with the way this post went. And you said you argue pretty frequently about different things, and then you went into him about being an arse to you for several hours and blaming you for his car getting towed, which is not your fault in the slightest. And then he comes out with that, "At least I have a mum." What an absolute evil thing to say. There is nothing positive that's going to come from that comment. What was he expecting you to say from that? Absolutely not the arsehole in this situation to me. And like I said at the very beginning, it's only been 10 months. And from that little update, OP's already told us the path they're going to be going down, that they're gonna, as of right now, we're broken up. And now I hope for OP's sake, with the continued arguments as well, that it stays that way. But Duskvale says not the arsehole. He had the right to be angry. No, he did not at all. You were trying to help him and the whole time he was unappreciative. Put the comment on top of that, which is horribly rude comment and kind of disgusting. You've got yourself a pure a-hole. Kick him to the curb literally and figuratively. Dump his grumpy ass. You did right. Don't put up with it longer. Key Slide says not the arsehole. Dump that dude. You already said you argue a lot and he's not willing to accept responsibility for something that is his fault. And he wants to insult and shame you to boot? For your information, if you ever get pregnant by him, he won't accept that responsibility either. He sounds like a real piece of something. And it was smart for you to kick his entitled ass out on the side of the road. Snarky Bean Broth and says, in quotes, he had the right to be angry to begin with, and then says, "I've reread your post several times and I can't figure out what exactly he had the right to be angry about at you. He is not nice to you. Your own words, you argue frequently and he uses you as his emotional punching bag to vent his anger. please consider not letting him back into your car or life. Not the arsehole for kicking him out of your car. Only the arsehole to yourself if you continue to put up with his bullshit. First 15 Live says, "Dear God, run now. Put your phone down and run. This dude is a dick. Blaming you for his problems, then resorting to an unimaginably cruel way because he's an arsehole. You said he had a right to be angry. For what? His car got towed, so he takes it out on you. You've been with him for 10 months and you're already living with him. Leave. Fuck that guy. I don't mean this in a negative way, but get into therapy if you're not already going. I wish you the best, OP." One final comment from Realistic Head, who says not the arsehole. That was an incredibly snarky and cruel comment. What point was he trying to make by saying that? Your boyfriend was acting like a jerk and definitely treating you badly just because he was having a bad moment. Are you his punching bag or what? He doesn't deserve you. I hope you know that. And so sorry about the loss of both of your parents. That is a huge thing to learn to live with and certainly not at all your fault. A good man would never weaponize that situation just because he was mad. So as I said, OP updated 5 days later and says, "If you didn't read part 1, I left a link for it, but before I get into it, I want to say thank you for the advice and support. It's nice to know I'm not crazy or the only person going through something like this. For those of you asking, I am female 21 and he is male 23. Most of you will be happy to know we are no longer together. He went to the apartment office, signed the necessary papers, and he will be moving out within the next 60 days. I'll be taking over the lease for the 2-bedroom, and until he moves out, he's staying in the guest room. We still have not spoken since that day. I've never felt more confident about this decision. I would have done it a lot sooner because he said and done some pretty shitty things that tested my limits. My excuse was I've been in a serious relationship for that long before. I thought it would work out and things would change. That day really woke me up and made me realize I deserved better than what I was getting. What we had was not love, and any feelings I had for him before are gone. Lastly, thank you for the condolences in regards to my late parents. My home life was always a bit rocky. I wish some things happened differently, as one can imagine. It's a touchy subject, and I definitely do not tolerate anybody making any sort of derogatory comments towards them, especially not from somebody who's supposed to be the love of my life. What makes this comment even more irritating is the fact that he never met either one of my parents. My dad lived in a different state from us when he was alive, which was the main reason why. To be quite frank, I don't think my parents would have liked him anyway. As for me, I'm just trying to figure out how to love myself again. I don't have any interest in pursuing another relationship or anything sexually. I've been 21 for about 6 months now and haven't been to any good bars or clubs with my friends. As a matter of fact, I've barely been able to spend time with any friends or family since we've been together. I definitely plan on making each day count with the loved ones I have left." And of course, condolences on losing your parents. I know firsthand how traumatic it can be. I myself, I feel like I kind of felt like I was very pragmatic about both of them, but I still do find like in moments of quiet or random songs that come on that it just like there's a switch that flips and memories that come rushing forward about that loved one, and it can bring me to tears very quickly. I don't always mean that in a negative way. The memories sometimes, the happy tears of times past that I absolutely love to remember. But like I say with any story when we cover death of loved ones, take time for yourself to grieve in whatever way that you need to, as long as it's healthy for you, of course. And if you find yourself struggling, always reach out for help. There's no shame in it. But now I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? How would you have dealt with it if it was you in that car? That guy would have been in trouble, let me tell you. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and let's move on to another story. And our next story comes from the Am I the Arsehole subreddit. Does come with an update as well from X is a dipshit and says, "Am I the arsehole for defending my husband after my ex-husband abandoned our children? I, 38 female, have a 9-year-old son Max and a 6-year-old daughter Olivia with my ex-husband Dan, 35 male. Max has severe autism and requires a lot of care. I remarried 3 years ago and my husband Luke is incredible. My ex Dan, 35 male, has them 6 hours every week. This week was on a Tuesday, and as I was away for a funeral, Dan took the day off work to be with them in the morning and evening. X and his girlfriend, Sophie, picked them up as planned at 11 AM. My husband took this time to play a round of golf with my brother. They finished the game at 4 PM and the golf is 30 minutes from our house. I got a call at 5 PM exactly from Sophie screaming at me about me abandoning my kids. I was confused and eventually realized Luke wasn't home yet. So I told her where the spare key is so they could wait for Luke to come home inside. Unfortunately, Luke's car had gone kaboom on the motorway and he was in a complete coverage dead zone. He was able to call emergency services but nothing else would connect. When the police arrived, the first thing he did was ask if someone could contact Dan to tell him what happened. Sophie was already on the phone to the police to report me and my husband for child abandonment. They said one of us should have been there and my ex doesn't feel safe inside our home. So they've left the kids inside our home and that the police needed to go and save our kids and arrest us. The police person speaking to them told them multiple times to turn around and they were the ones who had abandoned them. This whole time I'm getting messages from Dan saying how this was unfair on him and Sophie and that I'm a terrible parent for leaving them with someone who doesn't give a shit about our kids. At this point I didn't actually know what was going on. All I knew is that Luke wasn't home but Dan had found the spare key. At no point did he tell me they've left the kids alone. Luke got a hold of me via the police and I arranged for a friend to go round there as soon as she could, but the police already had a unit there after the call with Sophie. After this, I've decided to try and get his 6 hours a week taken away. I've given him so much leeway over the years and this was my limit. Our son is dependent on an adult and our daughter is 6, and the only thing he would say to defend himself is, well, I kept up my side of the agreement by bringing them back after 6 hours. This has caused a whole other shitstorm, to the point where Sophie sent me messages that the police are now investigating. Dan hinted he is going to try and get the kids taken into care because of my husband abandoning them. I had multiple people ask me why I'm staying with someone who abandoned my children. His parents have threatened to try and gain custody over the children, saying the children need a stable family unit, and calling my husband abusive. I said fuck this and put the whole story with evidence on my private Facebook page and people quickly understood. But now I'm being branded a drama queen and an arsehole for publicly blasting the father of my children, putting my husband above my kids. I don't understand how. He's more of a father to them than Dan is. I feel like I've taken crazy pills. Am I the arsehole? So there were some relevant comments asking OP questions. The first one said, did you mean the police investigating you or Sophie? OP says I worded it badly in the post. Sophie sent me messages and the police are now investigating those messages. Said some horrendous stuff about my kids and even worse stuff about me. Hopefully enough for me to prevent her from ever being near my kids again. More info on the police involvement. OP says I won't speak too much on the police involvement, but I will say they won't be investigating them being left alone. That's being handled by a more appropriate service. I made the report about the text she sent and they are treating it as an ongoing pattern of behavior rather than a one-time event. I'm not entirely sure what they meant by that, but I think they consider other stuff that has happened and lump it all together. I'm speaking to an officer on Monday. Then, in response to someone saying you shouldn't eliminate their father from their life, OP quotes the part of the comment that says, I don't think removing your kids from him 100% is good for your kids, and OP says, we're going to have to politely disagree here. He left them alone in the house and refused to go back even after the police told him he had to because they weren't his responsibility beyond that time. If that's not evidence that they're safer without him, I don't know what is. He chose this path, not me. And quotes the comment again and says they don't get to choose who their father is. And then says you're almost correct. They don't get to choose who their biological father is. The comment says I'd urge you to hold off on your decision until some time has passed. You want your decision to be well thought and not reactionary after all. OP says it's been 3 days. Assigning my very rightful anger about my severely autistic child and his 6-year-old sister being abandoned to being upset is demeaning and dismissive. How many times is an appropriate number of genuine child endangerment before taking action is appropriate in your world? This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't something he regrets. He still thinks he did nothing wrong. Also, the fact you're just assuming I'm making a reactionary decision and jump into no contact on something as serious as the contact of my children have with their father, patronizing as fuck. As for any other behavior in the past, he has 6 hours a week for a reason. I won't be going into our history as it's not required here. Someone says to OP, did your ex mean he was going to try and take the kids or that they'd go to foster care? Opie says he recently moved into Sophie's place, and I remember hearing something about a cold day in hell before she lets them sleep there overnight. For all his many faults, he's self-aware enough to know he can't look after them. He meant taken into foster care. His parents meant into their care. Someone says block Sophie, and Opie says she's muted. Police said I could block her, but they're looking into her actions as being harassment, so ongoing messages is very helpful to that. Someone says, what did Sophie say in the messages? Opie says, about me, she said I was a shit parent, accused me of neglect, said my car might have an accident, threatened to fight me, accused me of cheating on my ex with Luke, despite him living on a different continent at the time. Just unhinged shit. I've had stuff from her in the past, but never to this level. I won't go into what she said about my kids. So Opie comes in with an update that says, that happened a week ago. Post was made a few days after it happened. The post I made on social media had kicked up quite the fuss, but most things have been sorted, for now. And my post is still up telling people what happened. My brother Pete was friends with my ex-husband before we ever got together. He also never really got involved in our relationship, or separation. He never really been involved in my life beyond being a good uncle. He's a nice guy, but we have never been that close. He's always been closer to my ex and now with my husband. When he found out what happened, that completely changed and he put himself right in the middle of it all. My brother was always the beater in his friendship with Dan. I always suspected he was scared of him. Well, not anymore. He called Dan and ordered him to meet at Dan's parents, who he knows quite well. Dan was advised that bringing Sophie to this meeting wouldn't end well for him. I don't know exactly what was said, but the result of their conversation is that Dan's parents are going no contact with him. I don't like them. They've never liked me, but I've never doubted that they love my kids and will protect them with their lives. Pete did tell me that Dan made it clear he wouldn't break up with Sophie under any circumstances, even if it meant he wouldn't be able to see his kids. Pete explained what happened to my ex-in-laws, that the version of events I posted was true and went through the timeline and proof. Dan argued and bitched and moaned until his dad told him to leave. I think the fact that my brother, who is known for caring about beer, women and sports and nothing else, took this so seriously it got the grandparents to wake up. I spoke to them and although their apology was barely worth hearing, we came to an understanding. I'm not going to allow any visits or contact between Dan and Sophie and my children going forward. Our agreement was informal, no court orders or anything. If he wants to see them, he will have to fight for it, which I know he won't. Those 6 hours a week are now going to be with his parents, on the condition that if they allow Dan to be around the kids even once, they'll be cut off from our lives. They were fine with this. Today came and they picked up the kids and spent the day with them. They called me after 5 hours and asked if they can bring them back an hour later than planned. They were having a lot of fun, painting, and the kids wanted to finish what they were doing. No problem, thanks for checking. I cannot stress enough how much I dislike them, but knowing my kids are with people who want to be with them is such a good feeling. Dan didn't even text me asking if he was going to have his scheduled time today. I spoke to a police officer yesterday about the messages sent to me by Sophie. I'm going to gloss over some details for reasons, but they are moving forward with an investigation. There's a continued pattern of behavior and it's been escalating. She's made some very specific threats and over the weekend sent me a message that contained information she would only know if she had followed me to where I was at the time. Luke has set up external cameras on our house, including making sure our cars are covered by cameras at all times. Our neighbours know what happened last week, so they're going to keep a lookout for her as well. I feel awful that I let this person be around my kids for almost a year. I let her be around them, but didn't know her well enough to spot where she was capable of behaviour like this. I spoke to Olivia to ask what she thought of Sophie, and she said she was grumpy and not fun, but nothing to indicate she hurt them or anything. This reaction to the whole situation is just unhinged. Luke has been a star through this. He resisted the very strong urge to find Dan and beat him with a golf club. He's not worth replacing a driver, and made sure the kids know he loves spending time with them. Olivia calls him daddy anyway, but she knew she was abandoned last week and he's shown her that he's here for her. He's always loved Max and has been amazing with him, but I know he's found it difficult to connect. He asked for advice, so I told him to just try things he enjoys and see if Max engages. Well, Max spent 5 hours on Sunday with a golf putter in his hand, hitting a ball to the putting machine thing Luke has in the garage, and apparently he's a natural. Luke now has it outside as Max became automatic in the garage and needed a bigger green. So now I'm reevaluating my life. Living with one golf obsessive was barely manageable, 2 maybe more that I can endure. I'm currently typing this looking at Olivia's painting of a birthday cake. The range threats aside, I'm happy with how things are right now. Opie adds a little bit more information down in the comments about the investigation and says, the police are actively investigating and taking steps regarding Sophie. They have more than enough information to move forward, just a matter of going through the processes now. I don't know how the system works, but I believe there will be an arrest soon. And no, they aren't charging with child abandonment, but that issue is being looked at along with the bullshit with Sophie. I don't know what the plan is from the police beyond they have all the information. They're just focusing on the immediacy of the threats rather than what happened last week. And someone asked about the police efficiency, and OP said, all they'd done when I posted the update was come and see me to take a full statement and copy of everything that was sent. Not quite sure where the unbelievable efficiency is in my posts. But now I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Now, just a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, your support, your time always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much for being involved. Truly, you're absolutely amazing. And hopefully I will see you in the next one. Take care and much love.